It's no secret that current healthcare data is complex, fragmented, and not easily accessible. Data liquidity, that ability to easily access all health data from multiple sources, is an ongoing challenge, not only for the life insurance industry, but also for many other businesses and for consumers. Personal healthcare data is fragmented and stored in different and isolated places, in electronic health records, patient portals, pharmacies, clinical labs, our mobile devices, and even fitness wearables. So how can we access our data in a single location when we need it? Not only do we as consumers have challenges accessing health information, but often even those we give permission to access our data, like insurers and pharmaceutical companies, experience the same challenge to find the information. And this makes innovation with health data just complicated and more difficult than it could be. Now, I am fascinated by what can be done with health data. I absolutely believe that by drawing information together from all our health data, by connecting it, it can be so powerful in terms of improving wellness and preventing and treating disease. Personally, I believe this is where the single greatest impact to life expectancy is going to come from in the future. Not from further scientific breakthroughs, but just from getting the most from the data we already have, both collectively and as individuals. Now, Human API has been on a journey to help consumers and help companies acquire this important and sensitive information. Founded in 2014, Human API is a consumer-controlled health data platform that gives consumers and other users a simple way to connect and share their healthcare data with various related businesses and platforms and applications. And as a pioneer and an innovator in the health data field, Human API manages data integration with third-party data sources and user management across all data sources by using a secure HIPAA-compliant platform. And their system enables applications to get healthcare data from different sources in an easy-to-understand format and in real time. So today, I'm delighted to host a conversation with Andre Popp, the founder and CEO of Human API. And he will share why he started this pioneering company, his insights into their journey, what initiatives are now possible because of Human API, and how Andre and his leadership team are navigating the complexities of COVID-19 and his vision for the healthcare of the future, and how life insurance can play a role in that future. So welcome, Andre, and thank you for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
So maybe to start, Andre, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your motivation for setting up Human API?
Yeah, happy to. So although I don't know if I can do it quite the justice that you did based on that introduction. So my name's Andre Popp. I founded Human API in 2014. And my background, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. So I since the days of working in a ski shop in Whistler up in Canada, I haven't had a real job. So I'm the founding CEO and occasional janitor at Human API. And yeah, as you said, it's, the motivation for starting Human API was really that, innovation in healthcare lags behind, broadly speaking, across whether it is, two people in a garage working on the next big startup or innovation teams at companies like Score and elsewhere, right, that are trying to push the boundaries on what's possible. And in our view, there's a missing piece, this ability to create what we call liquidity in the healthcare data world. It's just a fancy way of saying we want to make healthcare data easy to get, make sense of, and use by folks that are trying to push the industry forward. And so that was really the genesis and the motivation, was seeing that it was now possible to build this transaction layer. And we can talk about why now and why now was the right time to do it. But seeing that it was possible and knowing that if we did it, we could help unlock some of that innovation. And that was really the driver.
And why now? Why is it possible now?
Yeah, I mean, really two things. So I think number one, the two sort of major trends, whenever you see these seismic shifts in industry, they tend to be backed up by leaps forward in technology, right? Yeah. And typically, so in healthcare, there were sort of two major trends that I think enabled Human API to exist. One is the availability of digital health data. Just, you've got a few things going into that. You've got the proliferation of electronic health record technology. We went from, 10 years ago, it was less than 20% of the country. We're talking about the United States here, but this trend also plays out in Europe and elsewhere. Now it's north of 90% in a lot of the more modern economies. So, and we're seeing that same acceleration happen all over the world. So sensor technology is another big one, right? So you're just seeing that much more health data become available. And that's one big trend. The other big trend, and this is core to Human API's model because we put the consumer at the center of everything we do, is that consumers were having access to that data for the first time. So it's not just that it was being passively collected, but for the first time ever, you and I have a right to our data. And this is being supported by legislation across the world, whether it's GDPR, whether it's HIPAA, which enshrines portability for a consumer in the United States, whether it's the new California legislations that have come out around privacy. It's all about giving the consumer control of the data. So it was really those two mega trends that made us look around and say, now's the right time to build this big company.
And you started building this long before COVID. Has COVID accelerated those changes? I mean, we see COVID accelerating a lot of these trends. How are you seeing COVID play out in your business model?
Yeah, good question. I think so. We were certainly very fortunate from a lot of folks. I talked to a lot of CEOs that unfortunately were not. You've seen some of these verticals that were some of these market segments that were very, very heavily hit by COVID, and obviously, their costs well beyond the business world. But for us, we saw a shift in consumers' awareness of their health data. First of all, that was a major, and then the acceleration of companies who's understood before that they had to digitally transform. The insurance industry is a great example of this, but COVID forced them to. And so we took a journey that we were already on together, and we compressed, shaved years off of it as a result of COVID. And so there was, across every single vertical that we operate in, across every single one of our markets, we saw a pretty dramatic acceleration of adoption and usage.
Yeah, I think one thing we also saw was COVID made people much more aware of their health, right? Much more conscious of their own health, much more concerned about things like managing chronic conditions. You saw the impact of things like diabetes and hypertension on COVID. And so as a result, people are a lot more interested in their health and probably looking for support to help them manage their health more than they ever were.
No doubt. And I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of the there were latent forces that were there before. COVID was a catalyst, and we're recording this in May 2021. Knock wood, we're on the tail end of this pandemic, but it's certainly, I don't think the awareness is going anywhere. I think the PTSD that the world is going to feel as a result of this pandemic and the investments that are going to follow in our global healthcare system, I'm very hopeful because of that raised awareness.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what's your vision, Andre, for like healthcare of the future? How are we going to be able to access our health records? Is it going to be an app or on our phone, or how do you think we're going to be able to access health records going forward?
Sure. I mean, it's a very broad question. I think we can think about it a few different ways. So the principles that I believe, that we believe at Human API, are really, number one, the consumer should be at the center of this. And that's not just because it's the right thing to do, but I think that's, if you look at how other industries have evolved, the best industries always serve the consumer and the customer. And if your healthcare data, it's an asset, right? It's just like your financial data or any other data that describes your journey as a person. It's your social data, your social connections. And we've seen companies that have evolved to enable consumers in other markets to take control of that data and share it with folks that they get value from. And I think that healthcare is playing out in a very, very similar way, right? The healthcare system of the future that we imagine is one where there are so many different digitally enabled companies, whether it be folks providing you with insurance, whether it be folks enrolling you in clinical trials when you switch employers, when you go and have demonstrate proof of a COVID vaccine in order to get into a baseball game. All of these things are require that you as a consumer have access to that data and then share it with folks that you find value from. Now, a really, really important part of this, Brona, as I know you believe and know well, is that the consumer should be in that driver's seat, right? It's not, I think we see these models where folks, try and sell, it's very nefarious, right? Try and sell third-party data without the consumer's consent. And it's, unfortunately, I think that's not, it's not really where the world is going. I think consumers we've seen this play out in other markets. And I think in healthcare, it's your most important and private asset. I would argue even more so than your money. Yeah. It's something that's immutable. It stays with you for life.
And interestingly, though, what we see is that people are more willing to share their health data than maybe their financial data, as long as they see they get something back from it in exchange. I mean, I don't know if you would share that view, but I think people are interested in their health. They're prepared to share their health data, but they want to get something back from it. They just don't want to share it for the sake of it. So they either want to share it for their own benefit, or I think in a lot of cases, they're prepared to share it for a collective good. But they want to know that they are getting something. They want transparency as what it's being used for and what they're going to get back from it, or what society is going to get back from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of skeptics in the early days of Human API that sort of pushed back on this idea, like, will consumers really want to share their data? And I think you hit on it when you use the word transparency, right? We looked at it as transparency and control. These are core pillars of Human API. We baked it into the DNA of our company. And the reason we did that is because you're absolutely right. It's not that people don't want to share. It's that they want to understand what is going on. They want to understand what benefits, and they want to know that it's being kept safe, right? This data is being created every time you go to the doctor, and they're recording your information in they're typing up whatever happened. And that sits in a system, sometimes on a server in a basement of a hospital somewhere. And when it's secured with an organization, an infrastructure like Human API, I think it actually brings consumers a lot of peace of mind, and it enables those consumers to say, look, this is a very important asset to me, and I'm very comfortable sharing it with companies that I know are safeguarding and taking this very seriously.
Companies I trust. I'll share it, but I want to share with people I trust, and I want to know what they're going to do with it. Yeah. And can you give us a few examples, Andre, of things you've done, right? What is possible now? You set up the company in 2014. What is possible now because of Human API that wasn't possible before? Tell us a few of your success stories.
Sure. So I think, let's maybe focus on a couple examples. I'd start with insurance because obviously there's, it's an area that we spend a lot of time in. And if you think about the life insurance process in a pre-Human API world, someone comes to my house, knocks on my door, draws my blood, takes some urine samples, then calls my doctor, and 8-10 weeks later, maybe they get some 800 pages of faxes sent over. It's 2021, and people don't buy products like that anymore. Like, that's not, I can go online and I can buy a house I can buy anything. And so I think, one of the things that we sought to do with insurance, and this is a very sort of nuanced point, right? Because you have folks that are selling insurance in a more simplified way, but and that benefits the consumer, but there's a reason that insurance companies have been around for hundreds of years. And that's that they're very, very good at managing that risk. That's the only way that they can actually offer these products. And so when we looked at Human API, we said, how do we thread the needle between the risk that an insurance company takes? So as you said before, the consumer has to be willing to share his or her data to actually get insurance coverage. I mean, that's just normal. But we don't want to make it onerous and burdensome on the consumer, because if we do that, then they just won't do it. Or they'll drop off. And so what's possible today is you can get the quality, the protective value, the quality of a fully underwritten life insurance policy and the price as a consumer, except the process takes 60 seconds instead of 60 days. That was a very big win for Human APIs to be able to offer that. Yeah.
You're getting the same risk classification essentially, but you're just completely getting rid of that painful and very intrusive process.
That's right. And it's so important because it threads the needle between, look, as a consumer, I want the best price, which means I want to have this experience, but I don't want to go through that terrible journey that I just described. So you have to be able to balance those two needs. And I think Human API, because of this massive network that we operate, that's what's been really cool to see, is actually being able to offer that coverage and scale it as quickly as we have to many people.
Yeah, and sticking on life insurance, I mean, I'm at SCORE, we're always looking to the future and what's the life insurance product of the future. I mean, I always think that life insurance, it could be so much more than it is today, right? So much more than just a once-off purchase where you have virtually no interaction with the customer until they die, and you're interacting with their beneficiaries. So I mean, really, life insurance companies are kind of perfectly placed to have this ongoing engagement with people on their health, and I would love to see the medical underwriting process that you're talking about, like that initial process, just being the first step as an ongoing engagement with people on their health. And yeah, I'm really interested in what do you see looking into the life insurance industry? What thoughts would you have looking at the industry, from a bit afar, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. And now maybe now less afar.
Yeah.
I absolutely would not suggest that we're insiders. I mean, I came to this industry. I didn't know anything about insurance when we started Human API, and I think we've hired, thankfully, some wonderful folks that know far more than I do. But I will say this: first off, the experience that insurance carriers were putting their consumers through was shocking. When I said there, I'm surprised that and maybe not so surprised that this industry hasn't grown more, right? Because I think, like you, I share this belief that insurance and life insurance is a phenomenal product. It's important, and it's just the process by which we buy it that's so terrible. But I think the life insurance vision for the future, if you will, is underwriting is just the front door. It's just the very first step to an interaction that you have with one of these brands, with one of these companies, and they're wonderful brands, and they spend a lot of money to make sure that they are top of mind for consumers, and so to carry through that brand promise as a major life insurer is all about what happens next, right? So and we've started to see this play out a little bit with folks that are trying to design new products to incentivize healthy behaviors. If you think about it, a life insurance company is the most heavily incentivized organization to keep you healthy. They are literally paying out if you die. And so they have every incentive to spend money to keep you healthy. And if you help them do that, right? So one of the things we do is we enable people to do what we call in-force management. So this idea of, okay, you've underwritten this group of folks, but now imagine if, for a benefit, right? If you're actually offering shared savings models back to those consumers, and you're saying, look, if you continue to share this data with me and we can see that you are, by all of these risk and lifestyle factors, staying healthy, then we're going to offer you discounts over time, because we, the insurance company, know that that's going to help our bottom line as well. So it's sort of a shared value model that I think is absolutely where the industry is going.
And I think consumers get that. I think consumers understand the alignment between, health management and the life insurance company. So if somebody's going to help me on my health and how to manage my health, well, yeah, I want those people to be financially incentivized to have me in the absolute best shape physically. And life insurance has that perfect alignment, as you say. And I find it surprising sometimes that we as an industry haven't made more of that alignment with people's ultimate health.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think it's where it's certainly where the industry is going. When I think about health plans, customers flip flop all the time. You change, and especially in the United States, where you have your health plan is tied to your employer, and if you're changing employers, you're changing health plans. There's very little incentive for a health plan to say, look, this customer is going to be with me for 25 years. I mean, how many companies do you know that have a customer for 25 years that they talk to once a year, maybe only once when they get under it. I would flip it on its head and think of it as an asset for insurance carriers. They have this massive asset. They've got millions of customers and a huge incentive to make those customers healthy, which is something that those customers themselves want. And so why not leverage that asset more? Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's somewhat surprising.
So where would you encourage companies to start, Andre? I mean, is it starting with the medical underwriting process, or is it a multi-dimensional approach across lots of different aspects of the consumer journey?
Yeah, I think that I would encourage, I mean, to the extent that carriers are able and willing to bite this off, I would encourage them to start a much more, multi-step process, but run experiments across the customer journey. I think that the underwriting represents the front door, as we've called it. I think if you set that up well, if you innovate in medical underwriting, if you innovate in the application process, what you're going to see is you're going to see more customers coming through, and you're going to start to lay a foundation for understanding those customers and those users. Now, in order to actually driving behavior changes is difficult. It's not something that you can do easily at scale. But again, these are customers that are with you for a long time, and you have that time. So I would encourage companies to think holistically about that process. And this is something that we do a lot with Human API. We have these various sort of modules as part of what we do that we run carriers through. And what we say to them is, look, if you just want to start with underwriting, that's fine. There's a tremendous amount of value in innovating and driving change in your, trying to make more business accelerated and improving on your medical underwriting process. Realize that in doing that, you're building up this massive asset, right? This captive consumer base that you can then leverage and start to drive behavior change, which is going to help you, help your reinsurer, help the consumer, right? This kind of triple win. So I think that I would encourage them. Now, we find leadership in some of these carriers is very, very open to that. And others are in more of a wait and see mode, or they want to just start with and just bite off the underwriting. I would encourage them to run experiments across the board, because I think it's the learnings from those experiments that are going to drive their strategy in the coming years.
Because it can feel a bit overwhelming, right? It can feel, I mean, where do I start? But I think you're right. I think like using a test and learn approach, and even if something's failed, well, you've tried it. You know what works and what doesn't work. Interestingly, I think what we're seeing across our markets is one thing people respond to more and more is information back on their own health. So I think if companies can translate it back into actions easy to understand actions that consumers can take to improve their own health. I think there's almost a longing for that. I don't know if you agree with that, but like translating all the data into something that is easy to understand and is actionable, so that a consumer can say, okay, I take this action and that is going to actually improve my health. That can be a bit hard to navigate for people still, I think.
I agree. I think there's a distillation step that has to occur. And I'd say furthermore, look, consumers are busy. There's a lot of what's in it for me. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that the underwriting process, as it's evolving, right, thanks to these innovations, is that it's really clear what's in it for the consumer, right? I don't have to wait 8 weeks to get a price on my policy. I don't want to have to schedule. I'm busy. I don't want to have to schedule a phlebotomist to come draw my blood. It's just crazy to think in 2021 that we would do that. And so as you think about that same idea of what's in it for the consumer in the, after they've bought insurance, there are tremendous shared savings models, right? There are tremendous benefits that you can, not beyond the benefit of being healthy. Look, I think that's the ultimate benefit. Do you want to live a long, healthy life? Of course you do. But in addition to that obvious benefit, there are other benefits that you can use to drive and gamification mechanics to drive behavior change for consumers in a really, really positive way. And I would definitely encourage carriers to think through and to partner with, it's whether it's us or we've got a whole ecosystem of partners that we work with to help build some of those programs that are specifically tailored to how do we take this group of people that, want to be healthy and help improve their health.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is part, it's obviously hugely driven, as you say, Andre, by the consumer experience. But for companies, this is probably part of a huge digitalization strategy to move to a much different digital model. And how would you think through that as as an executive in a life insurance company that maybe has old systems, and how do they move to more up-to-date technology? How do we, as a reinsurer, I would also welcome your thoughts on how do we move to becoming much more of a tech company? Because ultimately that's what it's going to be about going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think step one is what you just articulated, the realization that this is happening. I always like to ask the question of what if I were starting SCORE today, what would I do? Right? What would I if I had your balance sheet and your resources, but a clean slate, right? What would I do with that? And you're right. The answer is I would start it as a tech company. And and technology would be part of my DNA. And now, how do you get from where you are today to being that so that you're not sort of cannibalized by new entrants? I think it's and this is the innovator's dilemma, right? The sort of famous challenge that a lot of incumbent companies face is I think the way you have to do that, and you can do this through inorganic or organic growth, but I think you have to invest in cannibalizing your own core business, which can sound very scary at first, but I think that's really the only mechanism to truly move forward, right? So I think it starts with experimentation. It starts with the testing and learning of what's working here, right? We don't want to just we don't want to just start plowing investment into something that we don't have conviction around. But as you build conviction around these areas, I think it's very worthwhile. And this takes fortitude on the part of the executives in the company, right? Because you have to make decisions that are short term painful in order to evolve the organization. And I think you can say, look, if we were starting again today, and this is what we would want this company to look like, we would put tech at the center. We would actually make technology a core competency of the company. What does it take to do that? What sort of companies do we need to acquire? What sort of talent do we need to add to our team? I think if you start to ask those questions, and some of those answers might not be easy, right? I think or easy to stomach, but I think that's how you decide what you're at point A, you decide what point B looks like, and then you start working backwards. I mean, it sounds so easy when I say it, but
No, fascinating. That's really, really helpful. And any other words of advice you have for us, Andre, as we finish up? It's a complex world out there, right? It's getting more complex by the day, and as we in an established industry look to kind of keep our relevance going forward, I would say. Any words of wisdom for the life insurance industry?
I'd say two things. Look to the consumer and look to your why. I think
Mm,
there's a there's what is your consumer is your customer ultimately, and I think there is no industry that survives consumerization. And I think
mm,
on a long enough
mm,
time scale,
mm.
whatever is in the best interest of the human being that's on the other side of that telephone, on
Yeah,
the other side of
yeah,
that
yeah,
screen,
yeah, yeah.
that's what's going to win long term. And remember that. I think that's a really important North Star.
Mm, mm.
Um, and I think the other is look to your why. What's your purpose? Why are you doing this? I will flip it back to you though, Bruno. What advice do you have for us as new entrants, relatively new entrants? I guess a half decade into the insurance industry now. How do we continue driving forward here?
Yeah. I mean, I think the potential is enormous. I really do. I think this alignment between the consumer and the life insurance company is massive, and I think change will happen. I think it's hard to see I think we can all see where we're going to get to. I mean, we will get to a place where life insurance is about much more than it is today. Life insurance becomes health management with downside financial protection, I would say, if that health management doesn't happen, or doesn't lead to the outcomes we want it to lead to. So I would say, Andre, be patient with the industry. I think we will get there. I think it might take more time than you as a startup are used to or would like to see, but I would say patience and continuing doing the right thing. But I absolutely would. What you said about the consumer really resonates with me. I think as long as we are doing the right thing for the consumer, and I think the industry has a huge advantage here that we are completely aligned with the consumer. And I feel as long as we are acting in the interests of the end consumer, then it's sustainable. Then it will lead to the right outcomes. It might just take a bit of time to get there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you, Andre. That was really, really fascinating. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and for the continued partnership with SCORE. I think it's been awesome, and it's been great to work together. So thanks again, Brona.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Bye.